why are you really here? I'm going to put out a little poll right now. I just want to understand all the people that are in the chat today. Oh my gosh, there's so many people. I wanted to understand why you're here. This way I can get a better sense for how I should be presenting all this information. So I'm going to put out a quick poll right now to all the chat. Okay, go ahead and answer it. Are you here? A, learn something to help make me more money. B, the topic interests me. I'm a total blockchain nerd. C, I'm here to suck your brains so I can compete. That's okay. And D, change the world for better in a meaningful way. Or E, all the above. So yeah, whatever you're here for, I just want to understand what kind of people we have here in the chat today so that I can better present this information in a way that's going to connect with you the best way. So I'm just going to allow more people to put in some responses now, and then I'll give you the results. And it's interesting, the results coming in. They're certainly different from our last webinar. I asked the same question, and we got different results. Oh, we're almost going to get. Here we go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and publish I'm going to go ahead and publish the results here, and go. Look at that. Looks like the majority of you are here because the topic interests you, and you're a total blockchain nerd. Okay. That's good. So I guess that means that we should, oh, and a lot of you are here to make some money. That's fair. So that's all good. It's fine to be making money. It's fine to be a nerd. And so those are the majorities. And we do have somebody here to suck my brains. All right. That's all good. So let's just get down to it, and we're going to have some fun with this. All right. Whoa. Sorry, guys. I'm a little bit new to this chat, so there we go. Good to go. All right, why consensus matters to your coins. So what is blockchain consensus algorithm, and what are the goals of consensus mechanism? So I went ahead and found some information on this that's already prepared. I'm not about to rewrite the internet. So I'm going to share with you a really good source that I found that describes these things, and then we'll get into that. So I'm just going to turn on my screen sharing so that you guys can read along with me. Just give me one moment. Okay, you guys see that? Success. Awesome. Fantastic. So that is not the tab I wanted, though. This is the tab I want. There we go. All right. So can I control it from here? I cannot control it from here. All right. So we're going to get into what is a blockchain consensus algorithm. And here you can see this is an article that's provided by AX Academy. They've got a great consensus mechanism. How does proof of work, POS, DPoS, and other blockchain algorithms work? So they did a really good write-up here. I highly recommend it. Don't worry about having to feel like you got to write all this down. I'll give you all the links at the end of the webinar, and then you can be able to join in. So and be able to read it all, the details later. So what is blockchain consensus algorithm? Simply put, a consensus algorithm is a mechanism that allows the participant of the blockchain network to come to a general agreement. So consensus algorithms are critical for blockchain solutions as these systems are decentralized by nature, meaning there is no one central authority within the network. Due to the above mentioned, nodes who maintain the blockchain network have to agree on the validity of the transactions. This is the basics of what blockchain consensus is all about. It's essentially where you have a decentralized ledger and you need to be able to agree on what those records are all about. And so you need a mechanism, an algorithm that is going to be able to determine that is the true state of what the ledger should have. And that's the basis of all blockchain consensus mechanisms, is just being able to have ways that they can agree on how it should work. So what are the goals of the consensus blockchain mechanism? So there are various things that you want to be able to have in order to have this agreement. And so there are multiple ways that they come to this agreement in a decentralized fashion. Now, understand, regular databases, not blockchains, but databases that are centrally controlled, they don't have this problem, right? You just have somebody who controls it, and they they have the one database and there's nothing to worry about. But when you have to be able to agree on what's inside, what the data is, you have to have a way to be able to have everyone agree that this is the true state. So what are the goals of the consensus mechanism? To facilitate a unified agreement, right? In centralized systems, I just said this, trusting and authority is necessary to keep a network operational. However, consensus algorithms allow blockchains to function without requiring participants to trust each other, right? So I'm sure that all of you are, some of you are total blockchain nerds, so you understand what trustless means. That's a very common term. I personally don't like the idea of trustless. I like the idea of trustworthy. Because something is trustworthy, that means that it's worthy of your trust. Versus trustless is an inherent sense of being in a state of distrust to everything. Kind of like being on the negative side of the yin and yang, right? I'd rather be on the positive side. So I'd rather have something that's trustworthy. So as it goes on to say, and this underlying mechanism of the ecosystem is responsible for facilitating a unified agreement between network participants, ensuring all the processed data is valid, and distributed ledgers up to date. I'm just gonna take a pause now just to make sure that you guys are all following this. You guys are all following this? Great. Okay. So another thing that part of the goal for the consensus mechanism is align economic incentives. This is popular. For those who are here to make money. Since a decentralized system like a blockchain network regulates itself on its own, it's important to align the interests of the participants to ensure that it functions efficiently. To make this possible, the consensus mechanism uses economic incentives to reward users for good behavior while punishing bad actors. Okay, this is something that's very important. This is actually what is called a gamification technique. Okay, so by doing this, we're creating a game theory between reward and punishment. And so different kinds of blockchains will have different kinds of reward mechanisms in order to achieve this consensus of what is the true state. So you think about Bitcoin, for example. Bitcoin is proof of work, and you know that, and we'll get more into these, by the way, later when we do the comparisons. But with proof of work, we all know that when you're able to solve a block from the compute that you bring to the network, then you're going to be rewarded by the network for the compute you've provided and for solving that block and then getting a Bitcoin. Or in this case right now, we just had the halving just recently, which means that we're down to like 6 Bitcoin a block now, I think. Something in that range. So the Bitcoin, so the amount of Bitcoins that the miners get in order to provide the compute. So there's a reward if you're able to solve. In proof of stake, it's different. There's different variations in terms of the more stake you have, the more blocks the more block rewards you'll receive. But then there's also other variations of you have to stake your coins, and if you are a bad actor, you'll lose them. This is something that's rather popular right now in regards to some recent new novel blockchain projects like Chainlink, for example. They like to really emphasize the possibility of a bad actor losing their staked coins in the network if they don't act right. So it's interesting that one of the goals of the consensus mechanism is aligning by economic incentives. Ensure fairness and equity. The consensus algorithm also responsible for ensuring fairness and equity among network participants. Therefore, anyone should be able to join the network and everyone should have equal rights to vote. So fairness and equity in an open, decentralized blockchain means that anyone should be able to participate in the network in order to be able to be a part of that consensus mechanism. Now, as we go through the different kinds of blockchain consensuses that are available, you'll notice that some more recent versions actually don't allow this. They have it so that you have to be pre-selected and things like that. And in order to be selected as one of the participants in the network, it's very difficult. So it's important to consider when you look at consensus mechanisms, what kind of fairness and equity they have. How easy is it for you to be a part of that network? How easy is it for everybody else to be able to participate as part of that network, to be able to ensure that the integrity of the network is being run correctly. So prevent double spending. So since we have some blockchain nerds here with us today, you understand what double spending means. Double spending is one of the greatest risks coming to that comes with digital payments, since the issue could negatively affect the value of your digital assets, may render them useless. The consensus algorithm eliminates double spending to ensure that only verified valid transactions are included in the public ledger. So we all know that this is the big hurrah of Bitcoin when it was introduced, is that it solved the double spend problem of digital money. So since then, that double spend problem has been extracted and applied into other kinds of applications, so that we can have that same innovation introduced into the application layer, for example. And so with that, we do want to have blockchain consensus, which has prevented the double spend problem. All of them do that, they just do them in different ways. Ensure fault-tolerant blockchain. By ensuring that the blockchain is fault-tolerant as well as consistent and reliable. The consensus algorithm allows the network to continue to operate even when major threats, failures, and other incidents occur. So in my experience, I've seen this many times where previously I've been a witness in BitShares. Actually, I was a delegate in BitShares. Like when BitShares was when they had delegates, I was a delegate operator. And so I was there when we experienced outages of the blockchain, where it like stopped, for example, or where it was being attacked. After I was a delegate, I was also a witness, both in the BitShares blockchain as well as Steem. And so I've had a lot of experience of where there's been threats to the blockchain, where the blockchain failed. And when I say failed, I mean they stopped. But because of this fault tolerance within the blockchain and because of the distributed nature of it, nothing was lost. Like it actually, it was resilient to the point that it was anti-fragile, and it was able to just continue, and the data integrity was intact, all because of this fault tolerance that was built into it. And that's thanks to the blockchain consensus. So you got to think about this. Banks, okay, that where your money is nothing but a record on this computer database, are they using blockchain? What happens if there was an outage or a major hack where they just got into all the records and just destroyed everything, versus a blockchain where everything is locked up and the history is immutable per se. So I would certainly prefer it if banks were using a blockchain versus just their old database DOS systems that they use today. This is something that's an important part of the consensus mechanism. So you put all these together, you facilitate a unified agreement, you align economic incentives, you ensure fairness and equity, you prevent the double spending, and you get the fault tolerance. These are the goals that a consensus mechanism has in order to be able to provide the blockchain consensus algorithm. So let's go back. You guys can still see that, so I'm just going to go back to my slides here, and hopefully when I get back to my screen sharing, it's going to come back. How's everybody doing in the chat right now? Do you have any immediate questions from what I just presented, or should we get into the comparisons? Oh, we got a couple of questions coming in. Oh, all good. Okay. So the next topic is the comparison of the blockchain mechanisms. As I mentioned when I was talking about the other things, there are multiple ways that we can come to a consensus on what the blockchain state is, right? Agreeing on how things go. So there's many different ways that this has been done. It of course started with proof of work, which was the first with Bitcoin. We all know this. You've got nerds in the room. And then, of course, a little later, there was proof of stake. There was delegated proof of stake. And then recently, there's been a trend with proof of authority. Byzantine fault tolerance is, there's a couple of variations of that are out there. And then, of course, there is gamified proof of stake, my personal favorite. So I'm just going to switch over again, and hopefully this works, because I'm clearly having problems today sharing my stuff. Okay. Okay. Did it share? It did. Okay, sweet. All right. So we're going back to the same article from the AAX Academy, where they talk about proof of authority as well. Again, this is a really good article or a really good rundown on the different consensus mechanisms that are out there. So probably the simplest way to describe it is proof of authority blockchains make it difficult for candidates to become validators on purpose, as they are not only needed to stake their reputation, but they also have to be willing to invest money to support the ecosystem. So it works based on trustworthy validators that are pre-approved and selected by network participants to act as moderators. So this proof of authority tends to be blockchains that are VC backed. Okay, they basically want to control the whole thing, and so you're basically having to entrust that these validators, which are pre-selected, you're hoping that they're going to always ensure that that they're not going to run bad transactions. So really, it's all about just kind of selecting this select few and saying, "Yep, we're good. You should trust us to run this network. This is proof of authority." But some of the blockchains out there use this now. I've noticed it with well, what are the ones they talk about? Doc Token, VChain, and POA Network. There's some others too. Can't think of the names right now. Don't want to start spouting off names and I might be wrong. So, so do you guys? Actually, I'll just ask the chat since we have some blockchain nerds here. What other blockchains do you know use proof of authority, and do you think it's better than all the other three that we just talked about? So let's just check the chat out, just see how nerdy you really are if you know about these things. Not nerdy enough. Okay. ETW uses proof of authority, I believe. Okay. I don't know ETW, so space got so big I can't keep track of them all. But yeah, so that's a bit about proof of authority and what it has to offer. If I make this full size, can I actually navigate? No, I can't. Okay. So I will move along. Byzantine fault tolerance. Going back to the same document I was on. So consensus algorithm is based on Byzantine fault tolerance. So there's several variations for BFT, is what it's said for short. And so the whole idea essentially is to be able to ensure that the finality of the finality of the algorithm is going to be able to be resilient enough to be able to take attacks. So the basic concept, and I'll just read off here, the basic concept of the dilemma, called the Byzantine general problem, includes multiple generals of the Byzantine army that have surrounded a city in siege. Each general is located at a distance from the others, and they will have to communicate with each other to decide on their next move, to attack or retreat. So to compare that to blockchain, basically you have multiple node operators and they're all receiving information and they have to decide on whether they've got the right one or not. However, for the move to be successful, the generals have to reach a common consensus, right? So to achieve the above mentioned, each general has to make a decision, attack or retreat, which can't be changed later. So one decision and that's it. You either live or die. Furthermore, all Byzantine generals have to agree on the same decision, which they have to execute in a synchronous way, right? So the problem is that they're all coming in different directions. They all have to be able to communicate with each other, so they have to send communications to each other, and there's a possibility that the messenger they send out gets killed, or something happens to him, or he gets delayed, and so they don't get the message in time. So think about a blockchain network and all this information flying all over the world, and they don't have enough time to be able to actually get the information. That's the Byzantine problem. So in terms of blockchain networks, Byzantine generals represent the nodes. Bats have to reach a consensus of the current state of the ecosystem and execute the same action to avoid failure. To achieve the goal, majority of nodes have to act honestly in the opposite case, the network will be prone to attack this when attack failures. Byzantine fault tolerance represents a group of consensus mechanisms, which will be you can read it later. I'm not going to get into it. That will be resistant to failures and relate to Byzantine fault general problem. So they really emphasize BFT resistance. Now, all blockchains have BFT. Okay, some of them really focus on that as like the main thing, though. It takes time for some of them to achieve BFT, but in this case, there's some blockchains that are, for example, practical Byzantine fault tolerance, and that's by Zilliqa, sorry. So I'm not going to get into all the different ones. There's federated Byzantine agreement, which sounds pretty centralized to me. As soon as you say federated, it's centralized as far as I'm concerned. Delegated Byzantine fault tolerance, DBFT, which is done by NEO. So basically very similar to DPoS, but using a BFT for focused blockchain consensus. So those are some of the variations for BFT. And it's not super different from the other ones. Like I mentioned, one of them was like DPoS, and federated is like proof of authority. And so this one, no failures were much clearer. So this reminds me a little bit of proof of stake, actually. So they all have variations basically of similar types of strategies in order to achieve the same goals, right? So let's see what else is next. Gamified proof of stake. Ooh. So gamified proof of stake is a proof of stake which was created in BitShares. And where do we go for that? Oh yes, I brought up a slide for that as well. Where is it? It is not on this page. It is on another page. So if you go to pureplays.tech, we actually have a help page that talks about gamified proof of stake. You're not going to find this in any articles out there simply because it's so new that nobody really knows much about it. But what makes it different? Gamified proof of stake made a protocol change such that PPY token holders now receive a participation reward based on their voting performance and how many PPY they have vested or staked. So the way that this is a significant change from the original protocol where token holders were rewarded for their share in the rake, taken from a percentage of the blockchain fees, and then distributed to token holders relative to the token holdings, regardless of any voting participation. Put simply, this means that each PPY token holder needs to vest some or close to all of their PPY balance towards GPOS, and then once a month, vote each witness, advisor, or proxy. So gamified proof of stake essentially focuses on the gamification element of having participation. So this goes back to the problems that I talked about where each consensus mechanism gets into the real world and suddenly we discover, there's these kinds of problems that are happening now. What was something that was consistent with DPoS, delegated proof of stake, was the voter turnout. They could never get enough voter turnout so that most of the network would be participating, and part of that had to do with the gamified element of why people were voting. So with the gamified proof of stake, it was the first version that actually addressed giving participation rewards to the voters that were based on what comes into the network, not based on doling out more tokens. So there's a give and take per se. So as the network increases in its activity and as more activity takes place, you're going to see more and more participation rewards that are going to go to everybody who actually participates with the voting in the network. So they're basically, as long as they're making good voting decisions, they're incented to make good voting decisions because they want the network to perform. And so with that, they're also going to want to use the network because the more the network gets used, the more participation rewards they're going to receive. So it has this gamified element, which is not available in DPoS, POS, or proof of stake, or sorry, POS or proof of work. or the other ones. So this is just the beginning of GPOS. It allows for many other things to grow from this kind of consensus mechanism. For example, the last webinar I did was on sons. We have a whole other arm that's coming into the consensus mechanism. Right now we have witness advisors and proxies per se, but then soon we're going to have sidechain operator nodes, which will become a part of this. And the reason we can have that is because GPOS has people incentivized with participation rewards to select good node operators, which is important when you're a Bitcoin sidechain because you want to have good node operators. Oh, whoops. I'm still on the VFT screen. You're right. It didn't switch over. Sorry, guys. Let me try that again, just so you can see what it was I was looking at. Oh, now it's showing. Is it showing for you guys? Yeah, now it's showing. Yeah, so that's what I was talking about. Sorry for that tech hiccup there. So I already read everything that was in there, but I'm going to send you the link for it anyway. You can go through it. I highly recommend you read it over because, frankly, I think it's going to be the future of consensus mechanisms because that's the trend that's happening. So let's just move forward and see how GPOS works. So GPOS is very straightforward in terms of the usability. When you simply download the wallet, you log in, you power up, and vote. And that's it. And so then from that, as the network collects fees or gameplay happens and jackpots and things like that happens in peer plays, for example, then you're able to gain participation rewards for helping to secure the network, right? And then you could also power down, same way, log in, power down, wait, because there's a waiting period in order to be able to release your PPY tokens from being staked, and then use PPY just as a type of cryptocurrency at that stage. So those are some of the options you have in regards to delegated to gamified proof of stake. So why is the future gamified? The reason that this is important is because we touched on how blockchain mechanisms and blockchain consensus algorithms have certain goals, right? And part of it is the game theory that's involved for rewards and punishments and things like that. But what you really want to do is you want to have something where you're hitting on all the gamified elements. And the reason this matters is because as we move towards, as we're moving into the future, and what's happening now is a trend of gamification of practically everything. People don't want to have they don't want to have functionality, have to operate within just functional operations. They need something that's going to be human functional. Okay, so it's a human design that is going to mesh with the way that they work and the way they think and the way they feel. And if you don't have that, then you're going to end up with something that's functional, but it's not going to have the human functionality. And so this is where it's happening in blockchain, where you have these different kinds of consensus mechanisms, and they touch a little bit on the human element, but not enough to gain the participation that we need in order to achieve real decentralization. And this is why gamification is so important and why it's the future. And this is something which Peer Plays is completely focused on. It's something that I'm focused on. So when you think about it in terms of gamification, there's an epic meaning where we're here to build a decentralized, more fair, provably fair world. And so with everything that we do, where we're participating in a blockchain or participating in a project like Peer Plays, for example, we're creating something that's for a better future. So there's meaning to everything that we do and participating in it. Empowerment. You control the network, right? So what better way to empower yourself than to be participating in voting with the empowerment and being able to get participation rewards? Unpredictability. The unpredictability of GPOS has to do with the participation rewards. You don't actually know how many rewards you're going to get. So it's not like you're going to stake your you're going to stake your PPY and then you're going to get X amount of interest per month or something like that. That's happening with some DeFi projects and whatnot that are just doling out more coins and creating more inflation. Instead, there's a unpredictability to there could be a real there could be lots of transactions and suddenly there's a huge participation reward. Other times there may not be as many transactions and not as much of a reward. So it's a randomness to it that you just have that you get with it. Loss avoidance. You want to participate, otherwise you're missing out on all the rewards that could be happening. Scarcity. There's only roughly about 5 million PPY tokens in circulation, and the upper limit of it is close to 14 million, which means that there isn't very many PPY in existence. So there's a scarcity to being able to get it. And if anybody looks at the markets, they can tell it's hard to get a hold of PPY. Like there isn't a lot of liquidity in PPY because so many people are using it for GPOs. Ownership. I don't, you guys are nerds, so you know what that means in terms of blockchain. If it's your keys, then it's your coin. So you want to make sure that you have your keys, and this encourages that. And accomplishment. So you're participating in the governance of the blockchain. So you're certainly accomplishing something and feeling that accomplishment. And we're building more and more into the interface so that you actually feel it and you can see it as you're participating. So these are things that matter. Demo. Here we go. So as part of this webinar, I am going to actually do a demo for you of doing a transaction to power up. Here we go. Hopefully this shares my application window properly. I'm just going to make sure you. Hey, there we go. So I've already loaded up my PurePlays account here. I put in the private key so that you do not see it prior. Here we go. And I've got 25 PPY in my account just for this test purposes here. Obviously, GPOS Webinar 1 is the reason why I created this account. So this is a PurePlays wallet. You can be able to use it anytime. It's certainly available. So the GPOS panel is the first thing you see when you log in. And you just click Get Started. It takes you through this walkthrough, which is very straightforward. Explains to you what GPOS is all about. Just click Power Up. So opening balance is 0, deposit. So for Power Up, I can put in 25. I can't put in 25 because I don't have enough funds. Go with 24. There you go. So the reason I can't do that is because the fee to be able to power up. So I can't use my entire funds. And submit. You powered up successfully. That's all there is to it. So now that I've powered up, I need to be able to go and vote for participants in the network. So I can go vote. Easy peasy. So I can select a proxy right now, and if there's somebody that I trust, which you really should participate yourself, honestly. But if there's someone I trust, then I can certainly be able to put their name in here as my proxy vote, and then all the power of my 24 PPY are going to go to him in whatever he selects. I'm not interested in using a proxy. I'd rather do the voting myself. So I'll go to the witnesses. And I can see there are some witnesses available here. So in PurePlays, you can vote on as many witnesses as you want. So we vary in different different numbers. So I know the video said like something about 21 to 101. We go from 11 to 1,001. So it all depends on what the people in the blockchain believe is the appropriate number to have for witnesses within the network. So you can see I'm making choices based on who has the most votes. But I actually am familiar with a lot of these operators. So I'm just selecting those because I know that they'll go to good use. So we have 100% participation in the network. That's all good. And now so I'll look at the advisors. Who do we have available here? I will vote for this guy, and we'll vote for this guy. We'll vote for this guy and this guy. Okay, all good. All right, so I guess we'll just publish the changes. Confirm. That's the basics of it. Now, if I wanted to power down, I could just click the power down, select the amount that's in there. My opening balance is 24 PPY. I put in the 24 PPY and then just power down with it. So, and once I power down, I'd be able to basically, it'll take 30 days in order for me to get my balance back. Some other blockchains like Hive, for example, they take 13 weeks in order for you to get your stake. With Gamified Proof of Stake, we set it to 30 days. 30 days is sufficient in terms of security, but it's also something that's consistent for people to understand from a timing perspective. For example, a lot of accounting relies on monthly type of periods, and a sort of a 30-day period is something which aligns well with the way people account for their time. So by having it over 30 days and making that consistent, it makes it better for being able to it makes it better for just, again, a human feel that connects with that operation. So that is my short demo on this. Just turn that out. All right. So we're going to wrap up some of this, and we're going to get into some special insights into what new consensus mechanisms mean to you, and some of what we went over. Some offer opportunities to increase your coin value. So for all of those here, which have been here for the money, you want to look at consensus mechanisms, which are going to give you some kind of a return. Gamified Proof of Stake certainly does that. There are some out there. For example, I know that within some DPost networks, witnesses will offer to bribe you for your vote. So you can be able to, if you vote for them, then they're going to give you a piece of the rewards that they get. So you can look for those opportunities. It's not very well aligned, but you can also look at others that have staking rewards. For example, I know that Hive, for example, gives an ARP when you power up. So they give like an annual percentage and so forth. So there's opportunities out there. So in staking rewards, there's certainly opportunities to be able to increase your coin. So look for that. Nothing is risk-free or perfect. It's true. You can see from the different consensus mechanisms that there's the possibility of attacks. There's a possibility, and there's a possibility that depending on the size of the network, your coins may not be as safe as you think. But the truth is that when it comes to the fault tolerance that's built into these blockchain algorithms and the consensus, you have a lot more resilience in terms of being able to trust your coins where they are versus a bank, for example, or other traditional systems which are supposed to maintain your records. So I would certainly understand, though, that nothing is perfect. Expect it to change and pay attention to those changes, because that could have an impact in regards to the way that the security of the network works. The future of blockchain relies heavily on game theory. The ones that focus on gamification likely to win. And this is what I believe in terms of where the future is going. We need to have more participation in blockchains. We need to have people who are part of the network to actually participate with the network, not just be clients on the network. This means, and getting back to the question from Mitchell regarding elaborating on decentralization versus distribution, there's a difference in terms of distribution and decentralization. I think that blockchain in general has lost a lot of distribution, which then causes less decentralization in terms of having more participants. So you want to have gamification that's going to have the participants become a part of that network, because then you have more distribution. It's a wider kind of net. Decentral, and it could be, but the thing is that when it comes to decentralization, for example, proof of stake, with the staking rewards, you could have lots of stake and then just spread it out amongst multiple nodes. For example, some of them will brag about how they have 2,000 nodes inside of their proof of stake network, or they'll say 5,000 nodes, and you think, oh wow, there's 5,000 operators, but it's not. It could be one guy with enough stake to power multiple nodes, like they're just multiple wallet addresses. He doesn't even have to set up multiple computers. So you don't get actual distribution with that kind of system, but you do. No, you don't get decentralization, but you get this sense of distribution. I hope that makes sense, because it's a very fine difference. Be mindful of the blockchain fanboy taint. Okay, you can see even from the information that I was able to gather, I tried to find things that were as neutral as possible, but they all have a narrative. And the reason for that is simply because of everybody's going to come from a different background and have a different understanding of what these mechanisms mean. And oftentimes they will compare in a way that is actually leaning towards what opinion they want to convey. In this case, we saw how some of the opinions were, proof of work is wasteful. And some of the others were, delegated proof of stake is what all the new blockchains are using, and things like that. And the reason for that is simply because the blockchain fanboy taint is what I call it. They're tainted in their view. So participation is key to all of them. That is true. We need to have participation. Otherwise, if you don't have participation, it causes vulnerability within the network. So the truth is like, if you're like, I know that some of you are here for the money, and probably you just bought your coins and you left them on an exchange or something like that. Not a good idea. But the fact is that if you buy a coin, and if you're actually getting a coin and you like the project, participate with the project. Don't just hold it. Don't just wait until you're going to get your reward. You actually have to participate. You actually got to be part of the community, because if you don't, the fact is that it's going to cause insecurity within the blockchain network itself, because it doesn't get enough participation, which then leads to a lot of problems. So, whoa, hey, we're at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly switch over to the chat, and I'm going to see if there are any questions just before I head off, because I have made this webinar quite long.